once again to the Interjections podcast, a new series that we've dubbed the Undiscovered Decade because we, as a foursome, are looking at the hidden gems of the 1990s. And we're still in the first year. We're finally at November, so we're nearing the end of the first years of the project, trying to see how this whole thing is going to play out. And I thought I wanted to take a chance to highlight Disney a little bit, and this was the decade of the Disney Renaissance. And one of the most undersung films of their entire oeuvre is The Rescuers Down Under, which, as you can see, has been floating behind Jeff. He's there with the cast right now. They're kind of they're not going to talk for us, but
they took a vow of silence.
Yeah. It's just a still picture. So this was the second film in the so-called Renaissance. The 80s had been kind of almost a death knell for the studio. They actually almost shuttered their entire studio around the time The Black Cauldron came out in 1985. And there was a whole series of events leading up to that. After Walt Disney passed away a while before that. So they were losing animators left and right to other studios. There were people like Don Bluth forming their own studios, trying to recapture that magic. They were cutting corners on budgets, and they weren't really putting out a lot of good stories too. But the one thing that had succeeded in the 20 years since his death was the original Rescuers film back in 1977, and they thought about, for the first time, making a direct sequel that would be theatrical. We know them pretty well as having, in the 90s, done a lot of straight-to-video releases, like Return to Jafar and Cinderella 3 or Wrinkle in Time, But this one was a much bigger undertaking, and as we were talking about right before we started, this was the first 100% digital release of any film anywhere. So if anything, of all the films in the Disney Renaissance, this might be one of the most important. So we figured we'd talk about it. In order, it was The Little Mermaid really brought Disney back to the forefront, and everyone was really excited about what would come next. And then this fell hard. But luckily they had Aladdin and The Lion King and Hunchback of Notre Dame and Pocahontas was the next four. So that's why this got lost to time, because it was kind of overshadowed by everything around it. But I've been talking a lot about the history, but I can bring in little details more. I don't know. How did you guys feel about this? Had you ever seen this before?
I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, so it was refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I've probably seen it twice, maybe, but I don't know if I've actually seen the original Rescuers all the way through.
I've seen it once, like 20 years ago. So
yeah, so I think that was another reason why this didn't do so well, because the first one's not that fondly remembered. So to have a belated sequel 13 years later to a property that wasn't that profitable to begin with.
Yeah, and I think like a sequel that late, like you couldn't cash in on like whatever fan base you had when it initially came out.
Yeah,
like with like the like you established with the 90s with all the straight to video like sequels like to Aladdin and all that, like you had your fan base already there.
Yeah, we're only 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah,
I think Return to Jafar.
So it was like more Aladdin, more Lion King.
Well,
whereas this, like 13 years, they're adults now. So
yeah,
right.
Like, oh, hey.
Well, how successful was the first one?
Well, it's funny
financially, because then to establish how they have this technology sitting around, they're trying to figure out a movie to use it on. What would make them choose this movie over every whatever possible thing? It might have just been like a safer bet, because it's
I think it was more of a safer bet. I know that when they were talking to Mike Gabriel, who ended up co-directing the film, he had said, I don't want to do the same situation that the guys had done on Oliver and Company, which was the first attempt at the Disney Renaissance. It's kind of considered the last one of that 80s era where it's not as famous. That one did fine, And that really should be considered the impetus of the Renaissance, but that's also a little bit forgotten as well. But they were still using the cell animation where they were repeating characters, and it was just a slog to get through everything. And The Little Mermaid utilized a little bit of the CAPS system, which is what helped them make this fully digital in the first place. It's actually in collaboration with a small company called Pixar. And that was their first attempt at utilizing the people from Pixar. Yeah, one of the writers of this is Joe Ramft, who helped write Toy Story and was going to be the director of Cars. And he had his hand in the first 6 Pixar films and a couple of things in Disney like this and Little Mermaid. And like
Wow.
all the sequences that were done with Caps, the Stampede and Lion King, the all the underwater scenes that like this were flyby shots essentially. Those were all Caps. And so they tinkered with it a little bit on Little Mermaid, but then really wanted to try it on something like this. And I think it's what you said, it's just something that they weren't too worried about.
Right.
The one thing I know is Jeffrey Katzenberg didn't really care about this as much. And when this didn't do well right away, he shelved all the advertising.
Hmm.
So it didn't help it go any further. Like they could have had word of mouth. The ironic thing is that this got overshadowed by a bigger family film that one of Rescuers Down Under's co-stars was also in, Home Alone.
Hmm.
They both came out that first week. Home Alone does 47 million or something like its first weekend, one of the biggest openings of all time.
Yeah, and then it was like #1 for a bunch of weeks afterward.
Yeah, and this made 47 million, I think, total.
And with inflation, that would probably be like 100 now, which is still pretty low for a Disney animated movie.
Oh, it only made 27 total. Oh, and I'm just seeing sevens everywhere. Home Alone made 17 its first weekend, but Rescuers Down Under made 27 total. And as you were asking before, the original Rescuers did 47. That's where I got that number. So
adjusting for inflation between 77 and 1990, that's
yeah,
still not great.
Not much.
Not for the Disney Renaissance.
Yeah.
Little Mermaid, I know, made like 108.
Right.
Total.
Yeah.
And as we know, Lion King for years was the biggest animated film of all time. I think Finding Nemo might have beaten it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember loving this film as a kid, and like for the rest of my life, whenever I hear the word rescue, I'm like, these stupid mice come into my head.
I like this one much more than the original, like you said, Corey. And I think it's mostly because I saw it first. This was one of the first ones I think I saw on video. Just because I would have been 4.
Yeah, I think in every facet it's superior to the original. The storyline's more compelling. The characters are more they're more quirky and funnier. And I think that the animation is like delightfully kinetic. It doesn't feel like they're doing those flight sequences just shoehorned into the movie just to show off the new technology. It's actually incorporated and organic into the fabric of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the first shot through the flower field is spectacular. Even by today's standards, it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think of a couple episodes ago. We talked about, I talked about the Jetsons movie and how it had certain sequences that were all digital, which was going through space, and it clashes horribly with the traditional hand-drawn animation. This is seamless.
Mm-hmm.
It looks perfect, juxtaposed with the traditional stuff with the mice and everything.
When Wilbur's flying through everything, it is Wilbur, right? Orville and Wilbur are the two.
Wilbur, yeah.
Okay,
the John Candy character is Wilbur.
Yeah, so Jim Jordan had voiced Orville in the first film, but he passed away 2 months before they started doing the voice acting on this. So they had to recast and kind of reconfigure what they were doing. So you can kind of tell they're just like, oh, and I'm his brother. Which is fine, and it's actually a genius happy accident where they just are able to use the other Wright brother name. But
I actually think he's really funny in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good comic relief.
I love John Candy. So this may have been, I think, the first thing I saw him in. So when I finally saw him in live action, he was one of my favorite actors as a kid. Uncle Buck and Home Alone and Vacation. So, but yeah, the flight sequences, when he's in there, it doesn't look like he's over a green screen or something to get that digital in.
Right.
So
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I agree with Corey. The whole thing felt really like the CGI, not CGI. Well, it was CGI. You know, it was computer generated imagery. It worked. Um, like you felt like you were flying. You didn't, because a lot of the problems with the earlier cell animation when you're doing those intense sequences, it's a lot more difficult because not only do you need to do the frame by frame animation, but it's it's really jarring if you don't do it right, if you have it on the wrong perspective or anything. That's a lot of
Well, there's also the problem with like when you're doing a test animation to see how it looks. Like if you do it on, well, you don't do it on cells first. You do it on paper, but like there's a whole process of like having to photograph it, and you have to wait, and that takes time and money. And if you didn't do a good test, then like no, that's it. With digital, like if you do a pencil test, I don't know how it would work with digital. Well, at least digital then and in the 90s. I don't know how quickly they were able to get pencil tests going to see how it looked, but like I feel like
I know when we tried it, it was like in that day we could check out if we were doing well enough, even though we were hand drawing stuff and then just putting it into the computer. Obviously, that's with today's scanners, but you know, and the most rudimentary stuff we were testing. But I'm sure with this, they could figure stuff out a lot faster, even 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in, Jimmy's perspective here as our resident animator.
Yeah,
because this is the first time we're actually doing a fully animated movie on the podcast,
mm-hmm.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of the animation specifically, what I really dug about this movie, I completely forgot when we were watching this that it was a Disney film. Because
feels like a Don Bluth film.
Yeah. No, I legitimately thought it was a Don Bluth film, but by the time we finished, it's like, oh man, this is great. And then Tris was like, oh man, Disney, blah blah blah. I'm like, Disney, because like the actual character animation like is wildly different from like all the other '90s animated features.
Mm-hmm.
Like this one is like very there's stronger character animation because like there's a lot of like little bits here or there where like they're very gestural and like very
even look at her arms.
Very I mean delicate. I guess the animators were delicate with their character drawings.
Even looking at the characters, like if you knew who the voice actors are, they've incorporated certain attributes from the actors into the characters.
Right.
Like obviously they cast Bob Newhart originally for his stammering neurotic shtick, and you can see a little bit of it when I don't know if back then they recorded, if they did video recordings of people doing the voices, but
I know they did for a lot of other 90s films, so I think they did this. I read that they looked at shots from Dr. Strangelove to get stuff for George Scott's performance as Percival McLeach. So
That's
before
amazing,
he even came into the studio, they're doing stuff from like the War Room.
Yeah, that's great.
That's fantastic. Well, yeah, I mean, it was, just reading the cast list and saying, oh, all right, General George Patton himself is playing a villain in a Disney movie.
Yep. The one cool thing about Percival McLeach is that they ended up, if you think about it, you see Gaston and Scar even, and the Colonel in Tarzan and the villain in Atlantis. They're all kind of like these broad-shouldered, gruff, very serious
chins.
Yeah, they're all basically Percival copies.
They all have like lantern jaws and angular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is again kind of copying, but like they're fun villains. All five of those.
It's funny because all animation is you got to have like a shorthand. So in order to make him look more villainous, you have to have him with the high cheekbones, the angular features, the sunken eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really interesting because there are like 4 human characters in the entire movie. You've got the main boy, you've got McLeach. I think you only see, I don't even know if you see the mom's face. I don't remember. But
her back's
you see-
turned. And
Briefly.
and
they
you see
name her in the
dude-
credits, but they never say her name.
right, and then you see the dude in the messaging room which was also a really cool sequence when they were sending the message from Australia.
Yeah, another Caps.
Right.
Yeah.
But so, to your point, as far as the expressive characters, it's very Disney in that they hadn't done a lot of it was all animals in this one that they were focusing on. So they didn't really need to focus on too many human features like they did in Little Mermaid. Or
It's kind of like the Pixar modus operandi, because if you think about it, Toy Story was all like exaggerated humanistic toys.
Yeah.
At first, then they do A Bug's Life, which are strange creatures. Then they do Finding Nemo, which is all fish. They were testing out their underwater capabilities to get environments, and then they finally do humans, even if they're a little exaggerated in The Incredibles.
Yeah.
They were testing themselves to see if they could do stuff like Aladdin and Pocahontas and such.
I saw a really good going off of that. I saw a really good video where they went into the history of how Pixar did like animated humans. And they go through that entire timeline because they're like, we that's why they focused on the toys and Toy Story and then just kind of worked their way. And then they just had to sort of develop their style as they were going. Because you look at Sid and Andy from Toy Story and you compare it to like The Incredibles and you're like, oh, they figured something out.
Major leap forward.
Yeah.
The one thing that is a major departure for this, as opposed to some other anime movies from the era, the kid Cody can actually communicate with the animals and they can understand each other. There's almost like a Dr. Dolittle thing going on there. Usually they're in their own little microcosm. The humans are in their own, and they don't intermingle at all.
Yeah, like especially 101 Dalmatians, they're trying to communicate by like pushing stuff over rather than actually talk. Even though we hear both, and it's seamless in that.
Yeah.
Or Aristocats or Lady and the Tramp.
There's a great scene of speechless exposition when the Golden Eagle rewards Cody with a feather. And I feel like in any other modern day Disney movie or any other anime movie, they would spell that out. But it's all done wordlessly and it's beautiful.
Yeah, that when she puffs up her neck and everything.
Yeah.
You got that young Steve Irwin thing going on.
They focused on a lot more on attention to detail in this movie compared to the other Disney movies, like Corey was saying, not so much spelling out in this. It's more acting out than spelling out.
Plus, like the pacing itself is so kinetic, and in a good way. It doesn't feel frantic or anything.
Yeah,
but it's just there's a lot of cat and mouse chase sequences, and it's all probably it's just right. Didn't even mean to do that. But it even as opposed to the original, which I remember the original being kind of glacial. So this one, the pacing is a lot faster.
Yeah, the other one's I don't know if it's a half an hour longer. I should have looked up the runtime of the original.
Yeah, this is like an hour 17.
Yeah.
With credits.
The first one was also like an hour 18. Like it was around the same length. But I think because of the caps system, they cut off 6 months of usual animation time. So they're like, oh, we still have time budgeted here. So let's just make it as fluid and seamless as possible. Like they weren't forced to crunch.
They're actually the same length.
Yeah.
Another thing, back to the animation again.
That's what we're doing.
Another thing that I distinctly remember is like a lot of the characters were doing a lot of acting with their hands. Like you saw their arms like move with their with their general acting, and like there's a lot of like pointing and like hand gestures and blah 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 yada yada yada. Whereas like in the other like Disney animated movies, it's more like you see more of the acting and like kind of the shoulders and the head.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Aladdin.
Unless they're in a dance sequence, then like you see the rest of their body, or there's an action sequence, and there's the rest of the body. but like you don't see them like really get
Animated.
like really animated in like in the digits and they're like in their fingers or the hands kind of just like they're there.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like there's more world building
Yeah, no,
to
hands
the
are tough,
actual.
which is why it's impressive that like they just like spent a lot more time on the hands.
It makes the mice seem more I don't know if it's realistic, but then you
More
can
human?
relate to, I guess it's more
Yeah.
anthropomorphic,
Yeah.
so that you can relate to them better than even you do, say, Quasimodo.
Well, to that point, there's a lot more world building to the rescuers organization. Like I love that it's like really visually imaginative, especially when I love when they're out to dinner and they're in the chandelier above the fancy restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to see the like caucus meeting where they like give out the assignments and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. I don't remember any of that in the original.
Yeah.
I don't think there is. I remember seeing that second and thinking, why isn't there any fun like other constituents talking about like, oh, good luck in the swamp? It's just mainly in the swamp.
That's why this could have been like a series of movies where they went to different locales. So, which is a shame that this didn't do that well.
They did also hope to do a third film, but the box office performance and then Ava Gabor passing away in 95 kind of put the kibosh on a third film. They wanted to, and they were even thinking of it until she passed away. And then with two of the original actors gone, there was no real hurry.
I think this is her last film role.
It is, yeah. I bet it would have been straight to DVD at that point too, or video.
Yeah.
Back when they had.
DVD wasn't a thing yet in 95.
I still say DVD, even though it's all Blu-ray.
Straight to Laserdisc.
Back when they weren't just shamelessly cranking out sequels for money.
Right. Ironically, this one didn't get a third.
Yeah.
So I still kind of hope that could happen, because even though Bob Newhart's in his 90s, I don't know that you need him. You could have a new cast playing the two of them. Or have their kids or something.
He always sounded old, so
it's gonna be a live action one at some point. You gotta.
Well, they're doing that live action Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which
wait, what?
Yeah.
with Andy Samberg and John Mulaney playing Chip and Dale.
Are they? They're literally just trying to do the chipmunk thing.
Yep.
It
is going to be a hybrid thing with Andy and John being the voices, not really like there as mice. So,
no, I thought that it was okay. I thought it was going to be like, you know how
there's going to be
how Jason, what's his face, was
Jason Lee. Yeah, there's going to be a Jason Lee talking to the Rescue Rangers. I think that's what I'm getting the impression of.
Yeah,
I don't know about it. Though that to that point, the reason I liked Rescue Rangers was because I liked this. So this helped me get into all the Disney afternoon shows.
I mean, you can see the seeds of so much in this movie. How they like, as they were creating it, they're like, there are a lot of other things we can explore here. Like you could definitely see the beginnings of Ratatouille. You can see, it was also interesting, in typical Disney fashion, trying to figure out which animals they decided to make sentient and which they didn't. I loved the
eagle never talks,
right,
but the kangaroo does.
It talks in a way. It doesn't use a voice, but it talks,
right? The kangaroo speaks English,
right?
Which, by the way, the only person that has an Australian accent is I forget the other mouse's name.
Tristan Rogers. He's playing, and of course I blank out his actual character.
Jake.
Is it Jake? Yeah.
What is Jake supposed to be again? I don't even know.
A kangaroo rat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, if you think about it, Jimmy brought this up when we were watching. All the ones that don't talk are predators, for the most part, right?
For the most part.
I think Frank eats some bugs, but
yeah. And what's his face? Joanna.
Joanna never talks.
Frank Welker did the voice.
Yeah, Frank Welker, who is one of the most
prolific
actors for animals we've known. He does it pretty much everything, isn't he?
He's also Megatron.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
He does the Gremlins.
As far as I can remember, that was the first time I noticed there were repeat voice actors. Was when Frank Welker did Joanna. I was really excited because I'm pretty sure he did a Boo, but or a couple other things, at least in the 90s Disney era.
Yeah, once when you know a voice actor, like
Yeah.
you know a voice actor.
It was Frank Welker and Jim Cummings I kept noticing popping up in all the Disney stuff. So that was, I think, one of the reasons I was excited about this. And for me, seeing someone named Tristan in anything else, this guy voicing Jake was the first person named Tristan that I ever saw.
Representation matters.
Very excited. Yeah. Well, he's still acting. He ended up on General Hospital in the late 90s, and he's been there since. So he's been around.
It was.
There's also one of the Disney doesn't really dabble in darker undertones that much anymore, but the subtext to a lot of this.
Oh my god!
Going on in the movie, especially the comeuppance for the villain at the end is pretty harsh for a Disney movie. He goes over a waterfall.
They wanted to have him ripped apart by a pack of dingoes.
Yeah.
And then they thought about having that happen with Gaston getting ripped apart by a bunch of wolves. And then finally they put it in Lion King, where Scar is attacked by the hyenas. They felt it was fine to have another animal get killed that way.
The child in peril
They
scene
really wanted to do it.
where Cody's dangling over crocodiles.
Yeah.
He almost commits child murder.
This is like child abduction movie. It was weird. Which we didn't actually talk about the full synopsis at all yet, but you know, this wee lad in Australia gets abducted by a poacher, and then the rescuers get there.
Yeah, both of whom don't have Australian accents.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. I don't know why.
I don't know.
Cody starts out having an Australian accent. He's like, "Oh, bye, mom," and then immediately drops it.
Yeah, you're right.
Because he's the
I
kids.
don't even remember that. I thought like just the whole nonstop, just all American.
Yeah.
It's like Elizabeth Olsen playing Wanda.
Yeah, she's giving up.
Her accent's gone.
Well, she's doing a sitcom. I think that's a choice.
All right, that
No, the
I
later
still need to
movie she
watch, so
dropped
let's
it.
not get too far into that.
Sorry, that's over by now. This is late.
Yeah.
Well, she probably used her witchy powers to like get rid of her accent. Come on,
Sure.
she's a Scarlet Witch. She could do anything.
Womp womp. But yeah, and then seeing this weird old poacher guy just suddenly take such relish in abducting a child and torturing him, and throwing him in the same basement cage setup that he has for all of his prize animals, who you never see again for the rest of the movie.
Oh yeah, they don't go rescue the rest of them. I guess you just have to
Yeah.
assume that Bianca and Bernard go and like.
You
Cody
never
tells
see
them,
the mother
"Another
panicking
animal."
about the son being gone either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like
They never
the
cut
last
back to
shot
her.
of the last shot of the movie is Wilbur still sitting on the eagle's eggs, and you're like, did she ever go back for that? Like, what do we?
Yeah,
I also thought there was going to be a scene after the credits where he gets out from the waterfall, like he survives somehow. And I'm like, oh, never mind, he's dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope. And so begins the Disney killing off their villains by throwing.
You know
them
what's a
off.
weird thing that I just thought of? I kind of wish that like the villain survived, so that way he could have gone to jail. Actually, got punished for his crimes, especially like committing kidnapping. Like the kid was threatening the whole. Well, maybe not. Yeah, no, the kid was threatening like the Rangers are gonna find you. They're gonna get you, and like the guy wasn't afraid. He was like, "Yeah, they're not gonna find me." But like, what if they had?
Maybe that's why Home Alone did better, because they sent those villains to jail.
Yeah, like
that's why it did better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if the ending was that, this probably would have like done so much better in the box office.
It wouldn't have been as
That's
satisfying
fun,
though.
ending. Guys.
Mostly they just need an ending. It's just kind of like, well, we got you, Cody. Good luck getting home.
Yeah.
They wanted the
Going on
animals
foot
to be the
across
true
the-
heroes.
Like what if he died in the desert?
Yeah, he has mice to get him home. How is he getting back to his farm?
Bernard was actually fairly ruthless in the shot where he pushes him over the edge. I'm like, oh my god.
What if a pack of dingoes did show up?
Yeah.
And got them?
Yeah.
Like I don't think all that like grit that the one Australian mouse had would stop a pack of dingoes. Like it's a pack of dingoes.
Yeah.
You're dead.
This took a turn.
I was gonna say it's gonna turn to Wake and
Listen,
Fright.
if you're gonna set a movie in Australia, you gotta talk about Australia.
Yeah.
Of the two Australian movies that we watched back to back, this is the superior one for sure.
Yeah. It is odd that this is a big thing this year, but Crocodile Dundee hit so big that they rushed to put a couple into production. So
Wait,
I think this might have actually been the movie that like kicked off my fascination with Australia.
100% for me. Yeah,
Robert Muldoon.
that's it. Look at Jake.
Yep.
Jake and Robert Muldoon are what I loved as a kid. So,
But
The
like,
hat is
random.
yeah.
Did Ferngully come out after this?
it was like 92,
92.
93.
Yes.
So like, this was the movie that set the trend where like people in Australia have American accents.
Right.
Because I didn't know Ferngully took place in Australia to like high school.
It's not like Brazil.
No, it's Australia.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't
Really?
find out till high school. I was like,
Where's
wait,
the
what?
rainforest?
There's rainforest in Australia, just kind of tucked away somewhere, I think.
Okay.
I didn't think it was set in Australia either. I thought it was the Amazon.
Me too.
We'll fact check it later.
Yeah, watch, I'm wrong. And like, I'm just
Put
so
down the
good with
bottom.
internet now.
Yeah.
Correct him.
I mean, I'm already an idiot on the internet.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
That I'm an idiot on the internet? Come on, I already admitted it.
Just four idiots talking about movies
Well, there you go.
That's it.
on the internet.
Bad
Four
situation.
idiots, yeah, 4 idiots in a bad situation.
Yes. Four good guys in a bad situation.
I'm trying to think if there's any other.
A
fun
couple of
fact.
good mice in a bad situation.
I really wish there had been a third film, honestly, because they
Wait.
could have hopped around to other places around the world.
Do you know if any of the big original animators worked on this film?
Oh yeah, well the '90s ones, not maybe this. What was the original 7? The Old Boys or whatever.
Yeah,
they used
I
to
mean,
call it.
Like,
It wasn't them.
It wasn't because
Not like Ollie Johnston or.
yeah, because like again back to the animation
Couple
style,
were
like
still
just
alive.
the way that it looked a lot more.
The big thing with this, the
Professional?
thing that
I
I
don't
pointed
know.
out to you at the end of watching this was that some of the supervising animators would go on to do a lot of big things, like Glenn Keane, who just came out with his directorial debut, Over the Moon. He was in all the '90s movies. This was his second project, I think. I don't know, it wasn't second because I noticed he worked on the original Rescuers, but that was like he was a copy boy on that or something. Brenda Chapman, who ended up directing Brave and then just did Godmother. I know they're not the best, but she was getting her start around here. Who else was there? Those are the two that I noticed.
I'm
There's
horrible with names, so.
Chris Sanders, who did Lilo and Stitch. He was on this. There was another guy that did something with Treasure Planet. I noticed. I forget his name, but those were the 4 that I noticed. They're all throughout this decade. And Mike Gabriel, the one that I mentioned, directed this. He ended up doing Pocahontas, I believe. Where do I have our list? Yeah. Oh, he had done Oliver and Company, and he ended up directing Pocahontas next. Like I mentioned, Ramft did a lot of Pixar. Carrie Kirkpatrick, who helped him write this, ended up directing Over the Hedge for DreamWorks, but he also worked on. Actually, he did a lot of outside of Disney work. But here's a fun fact about Carrie Kirkpatrick that you like, Jeff. He ended up writing with his brother Something Rotten.
I was gonna bring that up actually
Yeah.
because I remember looking at that credit. I'm like, oh,
One of Jeff's favorite musicals. So
yeah.
these
So,
guys, all the people that worked on this ended up doing a lot of stuff for the next 2 decades that we didn't realize we loved. Loved them for.
Yeah. Well, it also seems like there was a lot more collaboration back then between animators and directors. Like you see a lot of co-directors and co-writers on things.
That's still somewhat common. You look at Pixar, you have people end up directing now that had been co-directors on Cars or like Good Dinosaur. So they kind of wet their teeth on things this way. But you're right. There's a lot more collaboration back then, I think.
Yeah. But it's also like a very good it's nice to see the animators in charge too. I know that's kind of, it's been up and down with that for the past 20 years, but
John Kay ruined that.
Well, this is when they were taking back their studio. They're like I said in the beginning, they were about to shut down the Florida studio.
Yeah.
and this totally revived them down there. And I remember I went to Disney once back in '93, and we took a tour of the animation studio, and they were so proud of showing it off because I didn't realize when I was 6 that they almost lost it all. And so they were showcasing Nightmare Before Christmas because that was about to come out when I went. I went in November '93. And so they were just thrilled to just show us, like, look at where we work. This is so cool. So I'm a huge Disney fan, so I take pride in the fact that they were able to revive their entire company from this. Though now they're like the evil juggernaut taking over all the companies.
Yeah.
So
Right.
for Rescuers Down Under, maybe we'd have less of a monopoly.
I saw some great meme the other day where it's just this fictional timeline of how Disney takes over the world.
Yeah.
They eventually
say it's
buy the
fictional.
United States.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's a Disney World in a lot of countries around the world.
yeah,
So like,
they're all just
they-
going to
they
be
have-
embassies.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're picking princesses in every part of the world, so you can be in the Tiana section, or you're in the Elsa section of the world. So
Right.
it's just going to be one big Epcot Center ride for all of us.
Oh god.
I mean,
As long as they take that waterfall out of Norway, I'm good.
and that's when you find out that everything is actually just a product of Disney Imagineering.
Yeah.
Birds aren't real.
Lithuania
Nothing
doesn't
is real.
exist?
It's all-
Well, actually, we're all in a Disney simulation. The Matrix was a metaphor for Disney. The
Yeah.
machines are Disney.
It's
We're really
it's-
going down the rabbit
it's
hole now.
spaceship Earth, man. Spaceship Earth.
All right. I don't know if
Sorry.
there's anything else we
Watch because we go on to these conspiracies, we end up being in like a.
So wait, hang on. Before we go on, Jimmy, there was a segment that I wanted to bring up last time that I think
Oh.
you can actually go into on this.
I don't know.
Describe McLeach's weapon.
Oh yes.
Wait, McLeach's weapon?
Yeah, do you remember his gun?
They actually did have a model.
Oh, legit! I did not pay. Like I was focusing entirely on like the animation.
Yeah,
So
he
like
gets into that.
it's like weird that like me being like a part-time gun nut. I don't even know if I'm no. I'm not.
He's just
Like,
he's
I just
our
know-
expert on weapons.
Yeah, I just know enough. I'm not over the board, but I wish I
I'm just
was.
trying to
more
find
than
it.
yeah.
But no, like I did not pay attention to his weapon in this. Like I was definitely like focusing like on the animation throughout the film.
Well, in
Well-
case anyone was wondering, according to the trivia, McLeach's shotgun is a Winchester Model 1912 with heavy modifications, including a scope.
Reminds me of Quigley's gun.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a popular. It's the Quigley.
The thing to do.
the Quigley, yeah, because that
Wait,
was
you said it was a
coined after that
shotgun?
movie.
Jeff, you said it was a shotgun,
Yes,
and the dude needs a scope on a shotgun. That's sad.
Well,
because he's a terrible poacher.
Yeah,
That's true.
I mean,
Also, it goes to I guess
Actually,
it's
got that
better
eagle in one shot.
he did.
I guess it's better
Yeah.
that Disney didn't go too much into like how detailed the poaching was.
Yeah.
So it's just like
I mean, all the animals described how they were going to get turned into bags and other paraphernalia. So,
That koala. Did you recognize the koala's voice? I know he's
no,
not
who was that?
a huge actor. It was the Sultan from Aladdin.
Oh, wow.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, he did a
Yeah.
couple of things, but yeah, you can hear it. He's like, Jasmine, don't believe me, or I don't know.
You're going to be a handbag.
The fawn's gonna take you over. Yeah, I guess my final thoughts would be something like, I want a third film. I guess if I were to ever somehow work for Disney, I'd want to write a third Rescuers. That's my dream project for Disney.
not make a Star Wars film
I mean,
or
That's
work
true.
on Star Wars.
that's under Disney now, so I guess
Yeah, no, dude.
Rescuers
Like,
in space.
can we have
don't
mice?
forget what kind of nerd you are. Jeez.
You know what I could do? I could have mice aliens in Star
Oh.
Wars. You just give me
Oh,
that.
God.
Or like the rescuers got like cryogenically frozen somehow, and they end up in the Star Wars universe.
No, I'm just gonna have a rescuers plot. in Star Wars.
Oh god.
It'll be like a sub story. Like during one of the other Star Wars movies, you just see all these little mice around the Death Star, like doing.
They're the ones controlling C-3PO when he doesn't have a shell yet.
They're going to be dining in the chandelier of the cantina.
Spec this right now. So
I assume we all liked this, from what I'm gathering.
I give it a firm B+.
It brought back some treasured memories, so it was good.
I give it an A+.
Yeah, this is probably, Corey and I were discussing this the other day, and I made a full list of all the Disney films because I've seen all the animated features they've made. So I made an extensive ranking. This is fourth, I believe I had it. Maybe.
Oh, we'll talk about our top 3 at the end of the
Yeah, that's what I want to do for picks of the month. So we'll see in a minute. Why don't what was your grade, Jeff?
I mean, solid B+, A-. Like it kept up, it kept your childhood attention span. And it was very well done. I don't know. I don't really have any bad things to say about this movie other than why didn't they go back and save the rest of the animals?
They needed like 1 or 2 more scenes where everyone gets home.
It needed a post credit.
I know I just assumed that happened, but
probably didn't.
I think that's why they didn't have it. They're like, they'll assume they got loose.
Yeah.
We assume the best in Cody.
Like them playing with scale and everything.
Yeah. I guess, Corey, what other films do we want to go to? I know I wanted to bring one up right before.
Oh yeah, you want to start with that one?
So for a brief sidebar, one of the other films that came out this month, this Rescuers Down Under came out at the end. The first of the month was right around Halloween, so they still had a little bit of a horror weekend.
I wouldn't even consider this a horror movie.
It was more of a thriller, but
thriller. Psychological thriller.
The reason that I wanted to start this off is back when Corey and I met in college, we would hang out and watch some movies, but the big thing that solidified our friendship, we went out on Halloween weekend and explored the area, and we were basically in the middle of a cornfield out in Pennsylvania. And the night we went out, which was, I believe, Halloween itself. I don't remember if it was the 30th or the 31st, but it was on a weekend. And we go out, and the whole area is shrouded in fog. We find this back road behind campus, and we start heading down it. And we see some creepy foliage that were like playing tricks on our mind in the shadows and the fog and everything. And we end up at the end of the road, and there's this big shed that looked like it was straight out of The Village, which had just come out.
There was a tavern that looks like it's straight out of American Werewolf in London.
Right.
The slaughtered lamb, that's what it looked like.
Yeah. And like a black cat ran across our path. And so we dubbed this The Walk, and we'd take it every year and like reminisce once we were out of college. Like we'd meet on campus and go on these walks and stuff. But the whole thing was, that night, as Corey came out of his dorm room, he's like, I just watched this amazing movie, Jacob's Ladder. And I don't know, was this the first time you'd seen it, or were you watching it? Okay, it was your first time. I took 17 years to get around to it, but I finally watched it because this is the month that it came out. So I wanted to see it before you discussed it. So if you want to tell them the synopsis. Jimmy and I watched it together too, so we can all talk about it a little bit. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, Jeff. So
I want to be a little tentative about the premise though, because I don't want to go too far into it.
Yeah. I think people should see this. This is one of the best movies I've ever seen. I loved it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Tim Robbins is he's a Vietnam vet, and he's experiencing some daytime nightmares, visions of demons. He's not quite sure why. He thinks it might be because of experimental drugs that he was given during the war.
Or even just PTSD.
Yeah, PTSD. I don't want to say any more beyond that because this movie's kind of like a Rorschach test. So there's a lot going on underneath the surface.
Yeah. But Tim Robbins is great.
And you know what? A lot of the imagery that we consider kind of chilling nowadays, some of the photographic gimmicks that they do now, like people's heads shaking really fast back and forth, was innovated in this movie.
I was wondering if that was the case.
Because I think the shutter speed of people's heads moving really fast, that really unsettling effect that's caused during that. And then there's a couple scenes in a nightclub that are amazing where you see almost like H.P. Lovecraft tentacles subtly, but because it's a strobe light, you're not quite sure what you see and what you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of Lovecraft in this too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I would say trippy.
Oh,
I mean, like we already
very psychedelic,
psychological thriller, but it's trippy.
It's the definition of a psychological thriller.
I don't have to watch this now.
I think you'd like it, Jeff.
It probably set the standard for psychological thrillers.
Yeah.
I think so. And it's weird because it's directed by Adrian Lyne, who's kind of known for erotic thrillers now.
Well, there's some sex in this.
Yeah,
There is, but it's a.
I think faithful, but
yeah, it's almost like a precursor to like a Charlie Kaufman mind teaser, because there's several stories going on concurrently, and the ending's a little bit open to interpretation.
mm-hmm.
It's ambiguous, but you don't feel cheated by the end. So actually, it almost sets itself up for repeat viewings. I don't want to give my whole critique on it because I know you want to talk about it, but
yeah, no, I wanted. That's how I wanted to lead in. I was just happy that it was as good as it is, because it wasn't like I was ever nervous that it was bad. You told me as we're going through. I'm remembering you telling me the entire synopsis as we were walking. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I did actually know what happens, but in the intermittent 15 or so years, I kind of erased it from my memory so that it would come fresh to me. So
I didn't give away that Lewis Black cameo, did I?
Yeah.
Did you notice him, Jimmy?
Oh yeah.
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 I didn't notice him. I actually don't know. Where was he?
When they give him a bath and they put all the ice cubes
that was
inside of it,
really
he's
fun.
like, "You're gonna be fine."
He's the
I
doctor.
realized that. Yeah.
He's the doctor.
Interesting. So,
Colin Quinn has a cameo too.
yeah.
Remember Colin Quinn?
Yeah, he's the hot dog vendor, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. The one thing I will say that I would like to mention that doesn't give anything away, it's set in New York for the most part, or Vietnam, because there's Nam flashbacks.
Yeah.
But I love seeing old New York, and like in King of New York, you got to see some subway, gritty, graffiti covered cars and everything. I just love seeing them walk around places that I've been now 30 years later, or even when I first started going 15 years ago. And all of it's so different. It's just a time capsule of New York in a way that he's in downtown, like Greenwich Village. So it's awesome to see the streets, how they looked then, because buildings are still there, but like you get the sense of being able to transport yourself back to 1990. So it's really cool to see. I love when it does that, and I'm sure people get that from LA or other places they've been.
The
New York
movie was
gets a lot of
1990,
films,
but it takes place in the 70s.
true.
So it's
right.
like a time capsule within a time capsule.
Right. So you get the 70s feel, but it's also like just the fact that it's shot in 1990. I get to see it when I was 4. So
What did you think of it, Jimmy?
Oh, I liked it a lot. Like it was pretty good. I may have enjoyed it too much.
yeah.
You related to it?
Oh yeah, it's like, huh?
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is so relatable because I see demons during the day.
Yeah. They're
Actually, no, I do get sleep paralysis quite a bit. So like it's like inverted, but like I get that. Like it's just like, yeah, you don't want to be seeing that.
Yeah.
Whether awake or asleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun.
Yeah, I'd say
great movie.
definitely check it out if you've never seen it, or
It's gonna have to go on Jeff's wish list.
honestly. But I definitely wanted to focus on Disney for this, so we could talk a little bit about all of Disney.
What a
I don't know if we'll
segue.
ever do it again, because honestly, like Pocahontas is huge, Lion King's huge, Aladdin's huge. This is the one that we could talk about for a hidden gem. So
Yeah.
Right.
so sorry to overshadow Jacob's Ladder, but